we've come inside at Ashton Gate because the weather is horrific. But it did generate a quite incredible game of football, of which Hull City were on the wrong end of a 4-2 defeat. But that doesn't nearly tell the story of what was a chaotic, basketball-like, if you will, end-to-end entertaining game of football from the first moment, really, of kick-off right to the end. Unfortunately for Hull City, they scored the first goal and the last goal in the game, but between that, Bristol City scored 4 times. And it was probably the most hopeless display of defending I've seen in an awful long time. It was just incredible. And ultimately, it's cost Hull City a result this afternoon because attacking-wise, they were fantastic. They looked, every time they went forward, they looked like they could score. But the problem was, every time Bristol City went forward, they looked like they could score, and quite often they did. There were 49 attempts in the game, 29 for Bristol City, 20 for Hull City. I think the XG, for those that, I mean, I don't really understand XG, I've got to be honest. But for those that do put credence in XG, I think Bristol City's was something like 3.25 and Hull City's was 2.22, which was incredibly high. I think Bristol City had something like 51 touches in City's penalty area, and we had 30 odd in their penalty area. It was just an incredible game of football. And for the neutral, it would have been fantastic. But as I say, unfortunately for those of us with a black and amber persuasion, it was the bit in the middle, either side of the 2 goals, was well, horrendous, really. Let's take you back to the first few minutes. Well, in fact, 3 minutes when Joe Gowhart scored. Again, it was a blistering start to the game. David Akintola picked up the ball, sort of darted forward, middle of the half, played a lovely through ball to Joe Gowhart, who ran on and clipped it over the on-rushing goalkeeper. And you thought, what a start! You know, given the record here, 2 league wins since 1965. The last league win here was in 2012. So this is not a ground that we have much success at, is it really? So City in front after 3 or just under 3 minutes, perfect start. The problem was they weren't keeping the ball. The midfield was Slater and Lundstrom in the middle, couldn't get a hold of it. The press that Bristol City were occupying was winning. They were winning everything, and we just could not get a foothold in the football match. It was, and as I say, yes, it went backwards and forwards, but every time they came forward, which was a lot, City just could not deal with it. There were crosses, there were shots. The ball was cannoning around, and arguably the biggest surprise was I think it took until the 18th minute for Bristol City to pull level with Emile Rees, who I thought at the time in the summer when he signed from Preston was a very, very good signing. But they've got to do better. Cross into the box. Pandor didn't help Giles. His clearance was blocked. The cross came in. Drame was beaten back post, bounced down, and Rees poked it in. The second goal was going to come. It came from Anis Mehmeti, who, let's be honest, always scores against Hull City. Again, really poor defending. Ball to the back post. Drame beaten. I'm not sure what John Egan's doing. Doesn't pick up Mehmeti, who stood a yard out from goal, and just directs it in the net. 2-1 down. Then you're thinking, right, okay, this isn't going well. But it started to settle down a little bit. City had a couple of moments. There was a really good one when Undala got into the box, cut back, but then slipped. Greasy pitch and all that. You're thinking, right, okay, get into half-time at 2-1. Then you've got a chance to regroup. The gaffer will hopefully sort 1 or 2 things out, because it was defensively they were a mess. They weren't winning second balls. They were in transition. They looked good in transition, but equally Bristol City just looked like they were going to score. You're thinking, right, get to half-time, we can sort it out. And then inexplicably, under no pressure at all, 10 yards inside his own half, Charlie Hughes puts his foot on the ball. Emile Rees comes and takes it off him. Just 1 second while I go and turn the lights on, because we've had that problem already. There we go, the lights have gone out on the Hull City's performance here. So Hughes takes his eye off the ball, Rees takes it off him, skates towards the box, Pandor comes out and he just slots it in the corner. 3-1, right on the stroke of half-time. And, obviously that's an uphill task for them from that moment on. But he brings on Carl Joseph at half-time. And in fairness, for half an hour, 25 minutes, half an hour in the second half, they were much, much better. They played with a lot more control. The change in shape in terms of having Joseph there, they just looked a bit better. Whether Bristol City took the foot off the gas a little bit, there could be an element of that. But City started to carve out one or two good chances, and particularly the best one, the goalkeeper Vitek saved from McBurney cross. McBurney got up and you thought all the world it's going to go in, and he dives to his right and he claws it away. I think McBurney would feel that he should have scored. I think I've seen the replay just now, and I think a yard further in the corner and McBurney probably scores. Suddenly they're at 3-2 and the game's a very different game. The atmosphere perhaps here is a bit different. But then they go up the other end and Twine hits the crossbar. Again, that moment summed it up, that Giles came across and made a really good block. Lundstrom just watches the ball. It's a couple of yards out from the goal line. Pandor doesn't do anything. Lundstrom kind of watches Emil Rees take the ball back, roll it across to Scott Twine, who somehow blazes over the crossbar via the bar. But then, look, they bring on Max Bird. Obviously, we know he could have been a Hull City player. Liam Rossini wanted him badly. He ended up leaving Derby for Bristol City. He comes off the bench and slots one in off the crossbar with, 12 minutes ago, I think it was. 4-1, game done and dusted. But, to the credit, look, you'll think I'm kind of like over-egging it, but to the credit, they kept going, and they kept going, they kept creating chances, and I'm really pleased for Carl Joseph, who had a couple of good chances before that. He turned in, the second goal in stoppage time. So, look, going forward, they look brilliant. They look like they can score so many goals. But since Coventry, since that clean sheet at Coventry, since Shemi Ajayi has not been in the team, I think is it 12 goals now in those games? 3 at Wrexham, then 2 against Oxford, 3 against Blackburn, and 4 here today. You can't. Well, it's very different to Tim Volter last year in terms of how they're playing. It's that element of kamikaze defending, and they just look awful. Like Giles had a bad game, Drame had a bad game, Egan and Hughes. How much of it, and we'll come on to this in just a minute, how much of some of that performance today is a consequence of Pandor not knowing what's going to happen over the next 24, 48 hours. Charlie Hughes has obviously been out, missed last week with illness. He only got back in training on Thursday. He looked a bit leggy at times, but his decision-making was really poor at times as well. Has he been impacted by all the speculation? We know that Coventry, the latest we know is that Coventry bid £10 million on Thursday. That was rejected. The owner is adamant he's not going to sell. From the owner's point of view, the case is closed. Charlie's not going anywhere. But I think it's easy to forget Charlie's 21, I know at times you look at him and you think he's older, he plays beyond his years. But he's 21. I think that was his 30th championship appearance today. That's not a lot. And suddenly he's thrust into a situation where you've got a club, in the championship that are bidding £10 million for him. That's going to, as much as football fans and as the media, we sometimes forget that. He's 21. That is going to have an impact. Let's look at it on a human level. And yes, you should say that Charlie should go out there and be at the top of his game. But let's be realistic. Let's strip it back. Let's be realistic about this for a moment. And I think it's reasonable to think that Charlie, at the age of 21, having played only 30 games in the Championship, is going to be potentially impacted. What phone calls was he getting yesterday? What's his agent saying to him? His family, his friends, people talking about it. It is going to have an impact. Panda as well. If I was a betting man, I would say that Charlie stays and Ivor potentially goes. But we'll have to wait and see what happens over the next few hours. But again, and I think Ivor potentially has been impacted over the last couple of games. I didn't think he was great against Blackburn. I think he's had moments throughout. I think, was it the Getafe game or Sunderland game where he was playing kamikaze passes out to Lundstrom 6 yards from goal when he was being marked. And there was a moment second half where City, I think Giles has worked it back to him under no pressure. And he's just casually caressed a left-footed pass into Max Bird, middle of the pitch, 20 yards from the centre of his box. That's not normal. That's not normal. I wouldn't expect that from a Championship goalkeeper. Yes, they make mistakes. They're human, and they're playing in the Championship for a reason. If they were more consistent, they'd be playing at a high level, with respect. But that was just so blasé. Even the first goal, when he's giving it to Giles under no pressure at all. And Giles is then had to hurry a clearance, which then gets blocked. The cross comes in and they score from it. just basic errors that they're making. So really concerning. And the manager post-match was really honest, and he said, look, obviously he can't wait for 7 o'clock on Monday, but he does think that this has had an impact on players, and whether they're going to go, whether they're going to stay is a moot point. The fact that there's so much speculation, and let's be clear, it's not just transfer nonsense or age. There's genuine interest here. You know, this is true. This isn't the media whipping up speculation for clicks or to sell papers. That isn't the case. There's genuine interest in these players. It's not fabricated. We don't want Ivor to go. We don't want Charlie to go. But we have to report when there is interest. I'm sure the players understand that, and et cetera, et cetera. It's the transfer window, and it is really hard for players when there's speculation and uncertainty. You know, Charlie doesn't know if he's going to be a Hull City player on Tuesday morning, or if he's going to have to report, you know, with Coventry or another club. You know, that's the reality of it. Yes, City don't want to sell. The owner doesn't want to sell. But if Coventry come back with £15 million, there's a conversation. It might be, thanks very much, Charlie. That, you know, that is uncertain. It's really uncertain. So perhaps it's not a surprise that we're seeing a couple of dodgy performances. I think it's a good thing now for everybody that the window closes on Monday. Then they've got the best part of 2 weeks before they play again, which should give people time to calm down a little bit, and just, they all know where they're going to be, however that looks come Tuesday morning. So yeah, but look, he's got to, the manager has got to figure out what he's going to do defensively, because this is not sustainable. Going forward, they look really good. But going back the other way, they look a mess. Midfield was a mess. Defensively, winning tackles or not winning tackles was a mess. Yes, Ajay's been a big miss. Yes, Matt Crooks is a big miss. But, you know, you're still bringing in good players. John Egan's played a lot of games. Regan Slater has played a lot of games. John Lundstrom's played a lot of games. And, you know, they've got to take accountability, because that today was not acceptable defensively. As I say, going forward, they look good. I thought Akintola looked really bright. There was a couple of moments, particularly obviously the assist for the goal. He should have scored actually at 3-1. They worked a nice corner, and he got the ball left side of the penalty area, and you thought hit the target, but he's dragged it wide. He should have hit the target. But I liked Akintola. I thought there was, you know, look, let's be honest. There's a lot of cynicism about players that are coming from Turkey, given, and rightly so, because the players that have come from Turkey over the last 3 years, bar Tufan, and Tufan was successful under Liam, the rest of them have been flops, haven't they? Whether it's, you know, Cynic, whether it's Lakilo, I'm not criticising Turkish specific players, but the players that have come from the Super League, whatever nationality, have not been successful. I'm not being overly critical, but you've just got to look at the facts. There's been a few players that have come over and they've had zero impact, and actually have cost the club thousands and thousands of pounds. Dessan's another one. Might be a good player. We've seen nothing yet. He got injured, then he gets ill. You know, the jury's out. Is he going to be another Cynic who every time you think he's coming back he gets injured or he gets sick, or a catalogue of disasters? But what I would say is about Akintola, he looked really good today. Very physical. He's quick. He's direct. He wants to get forward. Really good ball through for Gowhart. That's not an easy ball, but he timed it perfectly. As I say, he should have scored in the second half. He created a good chance with a really direct run to the byline, pulled the cross back for Joseph at the near post. So I really like what I've seen from him today. Undala looked bright. I thought Undala did relatively well first half. But yeah, I think there's a lot going forward to admire, but they've just got to figure out defensively. Right. Christian, I agree with you on Akintola. Let's see what you guys are saying. Daniel, let's talk about Egan. I thought Egan was awful. Really, really poor decision making, and that's it. I don't know whether Egan's struggling or he's just in poor form. But there's no doubt about it. They're missing Shemi Ajay. But again, that's a consequence of the situation they've got themselves into, isn't it? Because Ajay's a very, very good player. But if Shemi Ajay plays 40 games last season for West Brom, they aren't letting him go on a free. They aren't letting him go. They're keeping him. Or, you know, clubs higher up the food chain than Hull City are taking him, aren't they? The fact he only played 15 times last season, and he's had injury difficulties, is why West Brom let him go, and City have taken a chance. And at the minute, it hasn't paid off because he's out injured. Akin Famewo, good player, but again, already injured. Cameo off the bench, injured already. And this is the problem when you've got transfer restrictions. You are having to sign players, perhaps good players, but good players that maybe only play 10 games a season. And that is the risk. And that's unfortunately the situation that they're in. But they've got to get Ajay back fit as quickly as possible because he's a huge miss. So, yeah, I agree. Lee, I agree with the support. Look, you buy a ticket to Bristol City, you're paying 35 quid or whatever. It's a heck of a long way, and the record's dire. So you're coming down here with your eyes open. But, yeah, I thought the fans were great. Stuck with the team. Luke, in terms of, let's read what you're saying there. Hughes, yeah, well, he doesn't want to sell him. Jack, in terms of Coventry, well, they've been told he's not for sale. And I don't think Coventry are prepared to go to a figure that would instigate a conversation. So, in many ways, they're going to waste the time. If they're not prepared to go any higher than 10, well, City aren't selling at 10. So they need to walk away and they need to look elsewhere. So, yeah, I'm not surprised. But as I say, I reported on, we've been consistent throughout that he doesn't want to sell him and that £10 million is not enough. Jordan, in terms of the Turkish goalkeeper from Besiktas, yeah, I think he's a name that they've looked at. They've got, look, no slight on Ivor, but if he goes, they can't just wake up Monday morning and go, well, Ivor's gone, we better scratch around. Dylan Phillips is going to be our number one. They've got to have, I think they've got 2 or 3 options. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. Yeah, Danny, agree. I don't think Regan was great, although he fashioned himself a really good chance in the first half. But they just got torn apart through midfield in that first period. Yeah, Benjamin, look, Pandal, he's one of the, if you look at the stats, last season I think he was the 9th best goalkeeper in the Championship for a team that finished 4 places above the bottom. So I think he got better as the season wore on, but I would agree, I think he's had a poor start to the season. And you look at the goalkeepers today, one goalkeeper has made pivotal saves. One goalkeeper has been found wanting at key moments in the game, and one goalkeeper's won 4-2, and the other goalkeeper's lost 4-2. So, yeah, I agree with what you've got to say there. Danny, I'm concerned about the lack of steel. Well, and I think the manager is aware of that. Hence why Amir Hadzimatovic is coming in. That, I believe, is done. He's just waiting on a visa. He trained for a couple of days. I think it became very clear on Friday with the situation with Abu Kamara in Madrid that Amir wasn't going to be involved here today because that deal was not going to get signed off before 12 o'clock on Friday, which is the cut-off to be involved at the weekend. So he headed back to Istanbul to sort his stuff out, get stuff and get what he needed. So he will be here and he will be in the squad for Swansea after the break. But yeah, he's a midfielder. They hope that we hope that Crooks will be back for Swansea. The feeling from the manager is probably not, maybe the Southampton game, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I absolutely agree about the stealing midfield. They were just overrun. They just couldn't get the ball, couldn't get a hold of it. Jason Knight bossed them in there today. So midfield is a massive concern. But Crooks will be back, and Hadzimatovic will be coming in. So hopefully that should add a bit of extra steel in the centre of that midfield engine room. Because if you don't win the midfield battle, you're going to lose the game. Football's pretty simple. Benjamin, good question about Brandon Williams. Good chance to mention the fact that Louis Cole got on. Good to see the skipper back on the pitch. First time this season for Louis after his hamstring problem that he picked up in pre-season out in Turkey. And look, we felt that this was a big game for Cody Drame today. You know, with the skipper now fit and available, Cody had a difficult game. Yeah, a couple of nice bits going forward, but fundamentally he's there to defend. And there was 2 headers at the back post that he didn't win that have led to goals. You cannot be beaten as a right back, ball to your back post. I know it's hard when you've got the player running in with momentum, but you've got to deal with it. And I just think that Drame defensively today and last week as well, I thought was really, really poor. And I know fans will go, there'll be some fans that go, well, Louis is back now, so he's going to play automatically. But Cody's got the shirt. Cody started the season really well, but in the last 2 games, he's not covered himself in any glory defensively, which is fundamental to his position. So it wouldn't surprise me if at Swansea, Louis Coyle was given a run out. And that's not because he's the captain. That's not because he's Louis Coyle and he's local or anything like that. That's because the player that had got the position, had got the shirt, has had 2 poor games. I think for some fans, if it wasn't Louis Coyle, it was somebody else, they'd be probably calling for a change. So that's a really interesting situation for the manager to work out over the next couple of weeks at Swansea with Southampton to come 3 days later. Does he stick with Drame? Does he give him one more chance to kind of say, look, I've had a bit of illness. Bristol City was a poor day at the office collectively. We're all shocking defensively. Does he give him another chance? But it would not surprise me if Louis was there. And yeah, Benjamin, in terms of Brandon Williams, I mean, again, Ryan Giles has been brilliant through pre-season, but again, 2 poor, like Drame, 2 poor performances. Does suddenly Williams come back into contention? He's not played a first-team game for a full 90 minutes for 15, 16 months. Does suddenly Brandon get a chance to go from the start at Swansea? That would be a difficult one, I think, to chuck him in. Your first full game in 15, 16 months away at Swansea. But he's got to do something because they're shipping 3 and 4s now. Something's got to change. Yeah, Danny, I agree with what you've said there about transfer speculation. Christian, all over the place today. Paul, any update on do you think Palmer should be starting in front of Slater? No, because Casey's not a defensive midfielder. And if you're in that double pivot, as Slater is alongside Lundstram, you've got to be disciplined defensively. Casey's an attacking player, so I don't think that would work. Sky said Pandor agent. Well, I mean, whether Sky is speaking to people at the club, whether Sky is speaking to the owner, I'm not entirely sure. But my information, is that there is genuine interest in Panda and they've got a decision to make. So, we all get it from different places. Harry, replacements for Panda. They've got a list, but it's not easy. Obviously, they've got transfer restrictions. They can't buy it. They can't go out and buy a replacement. And if they're going to sign a loan player, as we all know, they can't pay a loan fee. So they're relying on somebody coming in on a loan free. That's not easy. You have to be cautious about the goalkeepers that are going to come in. How fit are they? How many games have they played? Why are they leaving the clubs that they're going to be leaving? Sometimes it's bet the devil isn't it? But the club needs the money. Pandor could help with that in the short term. But it would be a shame to see Pandor go because I think he's a good goalkeeper. I think he's had a poor start to the season, but that doesn't change the fact I think he's a good goalkeeper. And perhaps if he's still here after the window closes, then he can focus on goalkeeping. But it's, as I say, we're all human, and I think it's easy to criticise footballers, but this is a really difficult. Yes, we know it's part of the game, and they get paid a lot of money. I'm aware of all the rhetoric around that, but at the core of it, they're still human beings, and it's still uncertain for them, and it's hard. I went through it in the summer. I was at risk of losing my job in the summer when Reach came out and made a load of changes. I was told I was going to lose my job. I went through a consultation process. I was dealing with that when I was out in Turkey on pre-season. Did it affect my performance? Yes. It affected my morale. I was lower than a snake's belly. I thought I was going to be, I've got a family to feed. I didn't know what was going to happen, and I was told I could lose my job. Yes, it affected. I felt really, really low, and I was really down. And I still did my job. I still worked hard. I still did it to the best of my ability, but I wasn't. It impacted me. And it still is because there's such an there's colleagues that are losing their jobs. There's colleagues that are going through a period within the company at the minute that don't know if they're going to be coming to work on Monday or Tuesday. So it's really uncertain. So, and that's here. So imagine what it's like for players. And yes, I know they get paid a lot of money, but ultimately we're all still human. We all still have feelings. It's all relative, isn't it? So I do have great sympathy, particularly for those two players that are trying to crack on and do the best in front of thousands of people. It's not easy. So I hope for them it's resolved in the way that they want over the next few days. Yeah, Lee, I'm pleased for Joseph. I really like Kyle. It's not been great for him, has it, since he arrived? But hopefully that goal, I felt like the goal in pre-season would give him a boost, but now scoring in the Championship to prove to himself that he can score in the Championship is important, and ultimately City need him because they can't be too reliant on McBurney. They need, if something happens to McBurney, he will get 5 bookings, I'm convinced of it, so at some point there's going to be a ban coming. If he does, he might get injured. City need Gauhart in good form, they need Carl Joseph to step in, and now he's got off the mark, hopefully that helps. Yeah, Jordan, I agree about results, set the tone for the rest of the season. Look, I still think there's a lot of positives to be had, but I can't get away from the fact defensively they're at the minute they're hopeless. You know, they've conceded 3 to Blackburn Rovers, with respect. They've conceded 4 here today. They conceded 3 to Wrexham. You know, 2 in the space of 70 seconds, crosses in the box. You know, there's a familiar type of goal that they're conceding. Crosses in the box, free headers or second balls. On the flip side, they are the easiest to stop as well. So they have to work hard. They've got to get back to the training, get back to on the drawing board. These are things they can stop, but they've just got to be better. Quick. When's Crooks back? Phil, after the international break? It always feels either tomorrow or after the international break. Yeah, I agree with you, Attilio, about Lundstrom. Poor game. Phil, any outgoings? Well, obviously we know Abu Kamara's gone to Getafe, and we know. I think to wrap it up before we go on for hours, we know that Kamara's gone, so him going means that Amir Hadzimetovic can come in, so that's 1 in, 1 out. Obviously, if Pandor goes, they'll need to sign a goalkeeper. If there might be you know, is there going to be interest in 1 or 2 of their other players? But they can only let that player go if they've got somebody lined up. So we're going to have to wait and see. I think there's a lot of water to pass under the Humber Bridge between now and 7 o'clock on Monday night. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens. I would say, let's just scroll down. Let's see what people are saying. Yeah, Danny, I agree with you. Frustrated, 20 shots and you've lost the game 4-2. But the trouble is the other team had 29. We actually had more shots on target. I think they had 6 to our 9. So, yeah, Wigan have got a sell-on clause, as I understand it. Matthew, so that there would be a fair chunk to Wigan. Another reason for not selling now. Peter, what's happened to the Moroccan guy, Rida Laloui? They're trying to sort out a loan deal with him, but they were hoping to move out James. I laugh because they were hoping to move out James Furlong, but he's now got injured. So he looks like he probably won't be going. As we reported, I feel like years ago now, Puerta's back at Leverkusen. Luke, what's the chance of more than one coming in? I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Somebody's got to go first. So player X has to go before player Y can come in. It's really straightforward. So if somebody comes in and signs Casey Palmer for £35 million, while they can't spend that money, they can replace Casey Palmer. That's just an example, hence why I use £35 million before transfer sites start spreading rumours. Yeah, I agree with you, Danny, about the space between midfield and defence. Agreed, Paul, I've just mentioned Coyle and Drame. Drame's had his chances. I say he started the season brilliantly. Last 2 games have been a problem, and you can't be beaten. I'm not saying Louis Cole doesn't get beaten in his back post, but something's got to give. That back 4 today was hopeless. Whatever reason, but they were hopeless. Let's see what other people are saying. Imminent outgoings, I mean, Abu Kamara, Phil, that's pretty straightforward. Luke Slater needs to go. Danny Giles has stopped bombing down the left-hand side, yeah. But I think, give credit to Bristol City because they were good today. They stopped him at times, I think. So, Jordan, in terms of Kyle, could it be a turning point? I really hope so. Look, he'll get stick because he's a striker that's not scored goals, and he came in not his fault for a big fee. But he's a really nice lad. I urge you, if you've not read and listened to the stuff we did with him out in Turkey, he's a really genuine guy that just wants to do his best, and it's not been easy for him with the situation at the club he came into in January. He's obviously had the ankle injury. He's had an operation on it. He's now on the bench trying to come off and make an impact in a team that were 3-1 down. So, let's hope that is the turning point for him. Yeah, Liam agreed about the international break. It's come at a good time. Matthew, they've got a decision. Well, there's interest in him. Do they accept the interest that's in him and try? I know. There's. We're just gonna have to wait and see what happens with Ivor. But I think from a financial point of view, the club will find it hard to turn down £3-4 million. I'm not convinced that £5 million is realistic for Pandor. I think if somebody offers 5, he's gone. I think more realistically, it's probably 3 to 4. But again, it's the end of the window, not the January window. Christ, let's get this one out of the way first. Let's just keep seeing if there's any. Steve, do you think it will be in the same situation come May? Do you mean in terms of the fee restrictions? Well, if they don't pay their bills on time, yes. You know, they've got very little room for error. I'm assuming that's what you're referring to. If they notch up 7 days of late payments between now and the beginning of July, they'll be in the same situation as they are now this time next year. So not only will they be unable to buy players in January, they'll also be unable to buy players and pay loan fees in the next summer, which is a catastrophe. So they've got to make sure that, whatever reason, they've got money in the bank. However they do it, they've got some money in the bank to be able to pay the bills on time, because if they don't pay their bills on time, they're in real bother next summer. Who said that? Harry, can we afford to give Panda a new deal? Yes. I think that's been talked about. Why does he keep picking Slater? Well, the manager likes him. He's also not got a huge amount of other options, Steve, in truth. So that, and they like Slater. Yeah, Christian, it's going to be a long day. Although, thankfully, not as long as normal, because normally my deadline day starts about 5 a.m. and finishes about 1/2 a.m. So this year, this Monday, it'll probably start about 5 a.m. The window closes at 7, and hopefully I'll get to bed a little bit earlier than 2 a.m, but it's Hull City, so I'm ruling nothing out. Danny, no updates on Oscar Zambrano at this stage. He was a player the club wanted. He's got no future. He clearly had no future at Quito, but he still can't play until November. So it's maybe something they might pursue in January. But it's a watch this space, I think. But obviously the situation they're in makes it really, really hard, doesn't it? Right, I'm going to have to call it a day, I think, because I'm getting that typical nods you do at away grounds. Luke, just quickly, do I see a scenario where both Ivor and Charlie go? Yes, only if 2 clubs come in and offer stupid money, but I don't see that happening with Charlie Hughes at this stage. So, no, I think if I was to put money on the table, which I never do, because I'm rubbish at it, I would say that Charlie stays and Ivor goes. But again, anything can happen. So I don't want to, and I'd like Ivor to stay, but it's the transfer window, and City, you know, are in a situation where they really could do with some money coming in for player. Liam, any news on the midfielder yet? I mentioned this earlier on, so I'll just very quickly recap. We're just waiting on his visa now. Everything else is done and signed. No, I know Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's left Besiktas. He was sacked after their Conference League playoff exit the other night. And they've got a new manager now, but the deal's done. That's no impact on him. He's gone back to Turkey to get his stuff. So he's expected at training. He already has trained. So it's just a case of getting his visa. Phil, again, yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? They want another player in. There's no doubt they do want another player in, another midfielder in addition to Amir. But they've got to get somebody out. It's dead straightforward. They can't just go out and get 2 or 3 players on Monday. They have to get rid of somebody first. So, and that's not easy. You've got to be able to get that player's. There's got to be interest in that player. Then the deal's got to be right. The player's got to want to go, and that's all got to be done in 48 hours. That's not easy. So there's a lot of things that need to happen before City can bring somebody in, and we all know that. So that's it. But I would expect, Mark. I don't think City is screwed if Ivor goes. I think there are goalkeepers out there. It's just finding the right one. Harry, in terms of, is it FFP related? Yes, they've got a squad. They're at the limit of their squad, and they're on the limit of FFP. So it is FFP related. They're 1 in, 1 out, and financially their wage bill is right on the top max. So it's a case. So while they could let Harry Vaughan go out on loan, you know, and again, please don't take these figures. I'm just making. I'm making figures up here. Let's say Harry Vaughan's on £2,500 a week. They can't let Harry Vaughan go and then bring in a Patrick Bamford who would be on £40,000 a week. Obviously, we don't need abacuses to work that out. So it's almost like for like. So if a senior player goes, if John Egan goes for £100 million, they can bring in a replacement who will be on similar money. So that's how it can work, as I understand it. Harvey, it's not a case of they want to replace Ivor. I think they've got to have options. But yes, I think he's one of them. But that's not an easy deal to do, I don't think. Mark, you're right, player of the season, although there wasn't a huge amount of competition, in fairness. Brian, yeah, Rome wasn't built in a day. Look, it's still been an okay start to the season. It's been okay. They need they need Crooks and Ajay back, but a lot to learn. Right, I am going to call it. Yeah, Danny Allen. Look, deadline day is good fun in a way. It'll be different this year because obviously of the situation they're in. It reminds me of I covered a general election when I was at the Nottingham Post a few years ago, and I worked through the night on the election, and it was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. And deadline day reminds me a bit of that. We only get 2 of them a year, although it feels more than that. But there is a buzz about it. There's your phone's going all the time, and the deals appear that were not there before, and they try. I remember, was it last year or the year before, they were trying to get Fofana in from Chelsea at the 11th hour, and at 11:05 they were still trying to. The window closed at 11, and at 5 past they were still trying to get David Washington from Chelsea. So who knows what's going to happen, but it will be fascinating. But yeah, I'll enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to 5 days off after that to go and lie in a dark room, because it's been a tough window with manager going, manager change, embargoes, restrictions. It's not been a pleasant window. So I'm glad that it's coming to an end, and we can just sort of put it to bed for at least a few weeks until January starts up again. Right. That's it from here at Ashton Gate. If you've been here, safe travels back to East Yorkshire. There will be, of course, more reaction to the game here today over the next couple of days. Then we'll have a live blog for you from first thing on Monday morning. So keep an eye out from that. If you've not signed up to the WhatsApp channel, get signed up. It's free. And I try not to be too pingy with the messages, but I will be sending some messages on Monday with any news. So let's wait and see what happens. Hopefully, by the time the window closes, City will be in a decent position, and we'll know where we stand. We'll have some kind of podcast for you after the window is closed. I'll try and schedule one in. As I say, I'm having some time with the family next after the window is closed for the Tuesday onwards. Trying to have a bit of a break from it. But we will have a podcast at some point. So, look, thanks everybody for your questions and comments as always. Appreciate the support. You wanted entertainment. It was entertaining. It's just a shame the boot was on the other foot. But maybe, just maybe, in the next couple of games, we're on the right side of a 6-goal thriller and a 50-chance game, because that was thrilling in a way, but not in a good way, if that makes sense. Hull City beaten here at Ashton Gate by 4-2 in one of the most bizarre games I've seen for quite a while, but that's football. Hopefully City can bounce back in South Wales in a couple of weeks. We'll see you on the other side of the transfer window. Have a good weekend, everybody. Up there.